I think, yeah, we introduced this new sheet last week. Am I correct? Yeah, all right, okay. Sometimes I forget. And as Jerry said, welcome to the club. And I didn't mark on my sheet where we left off at. So I know we covered the introduction. So we're talking about a new word, the word able. And we talked a little bit about this word Sunday as we looked at Ephesians chapter 3 and studying about God is able. And we'll get to some of that later on as we move through this. But it has to do with the idea of ability, the idea of power, the idea of being able to accomplish that which is set before. And so we'll look at a number of things as we navigate through this in each of these sections. I've selected some passages in the Old Testament and New Testament to help us to look at the word and then some related terms as we observe, as you go through, and as we do the fill in the blanks. And so the first use of this particular term it comes from when the spies, and I almost gave one of my answers, when the children of Israel had come close to the promised land, and God gave instructions for them on what they were to do and entering into the promised land. So, and spies go in, identified by God. They travel throughout the promised land for a certain number of days, searching it out, and they return to Moses and to Aaron and the people with a report. And Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, who was one of these individuals sent in to spy out the land, came back and he stood before the people and said in verse 30 of Numbers 13, we are well able to overcome it or to take it. Now that's almost the end that's at the tail end of the account. But let's look and see some things which led up to Caleb utilizing this word able, easily take, the ability to do something. The New American Standard in that verse says, surely overcome it, Numbers 13:30. The International Standard Version says, definitely conquer. The English Revised Version says, easily take. Did Dolly give you that Bible to take a look at? Lyle, will you go look in the office? There's a Bible on the desk. It's a large print Bible, and it's for Sister Tate to take a look at. You want to see if this is what you're looking for. Sorry about that. So, number two, then, I know you probably already got it filled in, so who wants to take number two, the first part of number two? Moses sent out blank spies. 12. One from each tribe. That's how you know it's 12. He said, 12 tribes, take one out, one leader from each tribe. Verse 2. And they were gone blank number of days. 40, that's right. 40 days, verse 25. And that will be significant later on because of something, because of the number of days that they are in the promised land. God says for every day that you were there, you get 1 year. So they ended up in the wilderness 40 years, 1 year for each day that they were there. What report did the spies, and I should have written this better. I should have said, what report did 10 of the 12 spies give upon their return, verses 27 through 29? All right, they said can't do it. They gave they actually gave a false report because what they said was not altogether accurate. They said it true. Now they did tell that. They said it truly is a land flowing with milk and honey and its fruit. But they saw the land, the cities were strong, they're fortified and large. The descendants of Anak are there, the Amalekites. Well, God knew who was there already. It told them who. So they are just, that should not have come to them as a surprise. He had already told them it's the land of the, Moses had already told them whose land it was. So they gave this false report. Caleb, however, and I didn't ask this question, but who was the other lone dissenter from the 12 who, along with Caleb, did not agree with the 10? Joshua, yes. Joshua, the son of Nun, Joshua. So Joshua and Caleb were the only two of the 12 who were ready and said, we are able to take the land. The Hebrew phrase that is used there in Numbers 13, verse 30, is interesting. It almost like if we were to look at it in English, it would look like yokele, Y-O-K-L-E, then Y-O-K-L-E is how it might be spelled with a little diacritical marking over the E. It simply means to be able, have power. And so Caleb says, we are able, we have the ability, we have the power, because God has already told us it's ours. All we have to do is just go up. But for reasons that I don't want to say right now, we'll see later on in this section what goes on here. Now, according to the Apostle Paul, Romans 15, verse 4, this is recorded for our learning. And let's try to pull out then some additional lessons that we can glean from this incident, but specifically with the around this idea of able, and that is that who had given them the land? God. God had already, and God had been up to this time. God had been fighting for them. God had been providing for them. He brought them out of Egyptian bondage. The Egyptians pursued. God destroyed them in the Red Sea, God is the one who brought them to this point. And so, understand no job is too hard, too big, too difficult for us if God has commanded us to do it. If God commands us to do something, that means the ability, the power, able, is there for it to get done. We keep that in mind. If God commands us to do something, He's not going to command us to do something that we're not capable of doing. God would never command us to do something that we don't have the ability to do. Jerry, I'm sorry? Well, but so at this point, I'm emphasizing God gives us a command that we are able to carry out. Now, that other part is we're going to get to that component. But so what I want to think about at this juncture is, from God's perspective, He tells us to do something, we can carry it out. God told Noah to build what? The ark. God did not give him an instruction that he was not incapable, or that he was incapable of doing. He knew his capabilities, and He gave him a command that he could carry out. Just as God told Abram to leave his family, to travel throughout a land. He said, you don't know, you've never been there. But He gave him the command. So in essence, you are able to leave Haran. You're able to leave your parents. Maybe you've never done it before, but you can do it. And you can go where I'm going to tell you to go. And I'll make you a blessing. As we think about all of those examples that God has given in the Old Testament, specifically this particular one, from a New Testament perspective, we can preach the gospel to every nation in our generation. Isn't that the command that God has given it to us? Go into all the world, not just go into your backyard. We should start there first, but let's start in our backyard, but to go preach the gospel. God has not given us a command that we cannot carry out. Now, doesn't mean that you are the only one, Marie, that has to go to every, you're not the only one, because then, no. But the church has the responsibility to go preach the gospel, make disciples, Matthew 28. Now, the second part of the question gets to what Jerry said. Do you believe that God can open closed doors if we give Him an opportunity to do so? Do you believe that God can open doors that have been closed if we will let God do so? We should. Now, oftentimes we say, well, they won't let me come in there. How many times have we said, well, I can't go there? See, God can't open up any door that He wants, because no matter what door man might shut, people can put, they can put no soliciting on the building. Okay, fine. We don't necessarily have to go into that building to reach people. Right. And we can do that in multiplicity of ways.
And a lot of times it may not even seem like they're listening, but the planting still being done.
Yeah. It's just like that person who sits behind the locked door, they have their locked gate. Well, they do get out. they get out to do things. And God can put you in contact with that person, and you might not, maybe you run into them at the Walmart parking lot. Maybe you're at Frisch's having lunch, and they're there too. Maybe just walking down the street getting some exercise, and they're walking down the street too. But they got on their house. No visitors, no solicitation. Public street, guess what? Dan Jenkins mentioned something, and I didn't ask him to mention it. Dan and I were sitting at McDonald's over here, right over here on the other side of Interstate 75 right there. And we were there having coffee one morning when he was here. And we were just talking about a lot of things. And this guy sat down next to us. And we ended up in, this. Now, he had a hat on, which I'm glad he took off, because this hat, I was like, I can't keep looking at this hat. The hat had on it the words PORN. And he's sitting right in my face, and I'm like, please take, please take the cap off. I don't need to be looking at porn, a hat that's saying porn. So he took it off, and then he turned around, and because he heard us talking, and he said, we're Christians, we're preachers. I said he's here in a meeting, and the young guy stopped and talked to us for a few minutes at least. We gave him some information. Now, he hasn't shown up yet. Hopefully he will. But we tried to get him to see that hat wasn't a good fit. So let's not be like, the whole thrust there is, well, I'll get to this in a minute. We can send missionaries, we can build buildings, we can support the gospel in a multiplicity of ways. Not everybody can go. As you get older in life, you might not be able. There was a family, husband and wife team that used to go to Jamaica every year with us. Now they're in their 80s, and I saw them at Memphis, and they said, boy, we can't go anymore. But they are still involved with the work. They support younger folk who are able to go. They send stuff but they physically cannot make the trip. They said, no, we can't do it. It's just one is too dangerous. We can't, we're fragile, and we don't think why spend that kind of money when we couldn't do the work? And all we'd be so wore out just by the time we got there. Now, they hurt because of it, because they love mission work. And so they are still involved, however, because they're using the resources that God has given them to help others who can go. So we can send missionaries, we can send money. Of course, the one thing that every Christian can do is what? 4-letter word. That pray. Every child of God can pray for the gospel to go forth. No matter who we are as members of the church, we can pray for the spread of the gospel. We know someone who is, pray for doors to be open, whether locally, domestically, internationally. The power of prayer is important. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much in his asking, James 5. So if faithful Christians would pray for the spread of the gospel, for doors to be open, and if you know someone specifically who needs to hear it, use their name. Say, you pray for, this person to have a tender heart that they can respond. We received a letter from someone in another state about a family member who is not a Christian, who is over in London Correctional Facility. And this member of the church asked us if we would reach out to that family member, and if possible, they have now expressed an interest all of a sudden in religion. They are not going to be getting out of jail, evidently, for some time. And so they've asked us to, try to follow up, and we said, sure. So we've done that. We've, written to that family member, written to the correctional institution, try to see if that person, one, if he is truly interested in Bible study. And the way the facilities work, and I said jail, this is not a jail, the way the prisons work, because he's in prison, the inmate has to initiate the contact. So he has to place the desire, put our name down, my name down, et cetera, to allow me to come in to visit. But so here's someone several states away who their relative has, so that relative realizes that there's a family member who's a Christian who has been telling them about God. And so in communication, they said, well, now I'm ready. And they said, well, we don't, in that state, they said, I don't know of any faithful congregation. I don't know how close this prison is to you. Are you able to do something? Now London is not that close, but I've talked with a few, some other preachers and elders, and, if we can work it out, we'll work it out. Never know, again, God don't know what the door of opportunity is, but we'll take it. And so we'll be praying I'll give you this man's name if he sends us affirmative response. We can be as big or as little as we really want to be. It's up to, really a lot of it is up to us. How much do we want to do? Size is just a number, and we look for those opportunities that God provides for us, and we should be able to do what he wants us to do. Now, let's get to this thrust of what Jerry got ahead, and I was trying to hold him back for just a second. Caleb said, we are able. There's always one great hindrance. Matthew 6, verse 30. What is that hindrance? Is it? That's what Jerry said, Frank. Jesus said, "O ye of little faith." Those 10 of the 12 spies lacked faith in God. God said, "Go take the land." Now, he sent them through the land. He had already told them the land is theirs. Just go take it. He would not send them out there by themselves, unable to carry out what God had told them to do. That's why Caleb said, notice New King James says, we are well able. The Yaakov. We have the ability to do what God has told us to do. Caleb said, I went through the land. I saw who was there. Big deal. God said, take it. We're going to go take it. Today, sometimes we get this. Yes, ma'am. Well, they should have. I mean, and stepping, and I think if I know what you mean, stepping out on faith doesn't mean. So God gave them instruction and said, I'm with you. He told them to go take it. They had a command to go do something. Doing something by faith means we do what God has commanded us to do. We have a word. He's told us to sow the seed of the kingdom. He's told us to go make disciples. And when we do that, we are doing it, and when we do it in accordance to his will, we're doing it by faith. Now, God has not said you got to chew the whole apple. But every Christian, every congregation needs to be doing its part within the ability. And oftentimes we think we can't when we really can. We get the 10 spy attitude. Well, it's just so big, we can't do it. Well, yeah, because whose eyes were they looking through? Right, because note you go back, you go back and look, it says, in our eyes. As opposed to Caleb and Joshua who said, no, God's already told us. We know we know what we saw. Yeah. Well, that's correct. So, yeah, with what God had already done for them, they should have. And this is where we need to learn from. For us, as I said, we have even greater encouragement from Matthew 28:20. What's the greater encouragement? What's the greater encouragement for us? Well, not only the Word of God, but I heard somebody say it. Yeah, Jesus said, I'll be with you how long? Always. The greater encouragement we have, the Lord has said, I will be with you always. And so Jesus has told us that he is with us to carry out the will of the Father. We just have to provide our trust in what he is able to do. He's able. He has the power, the ability to get the work done. Too many times we think the ability is in us, and we get, well, I can't, I failed, or we get scared. We're human beings, and I would be lying to say as human beings, fear gets in the way. Whether it's a fear of heights, it's a fear of certain types of critters. Some people, what is anacrophobia is what? A fear of spiders? I must tell you, I hate lizards. And when I was in Costa Rica, I'll tell you what, them things were everywhere. We picked up the rental car and somebody said, oh, look at that big old iguana was out there at the end of the drive. I mean, that big old thing out there. I said, good. I said, as long as he stay out there at the gate. And then we get to the hotel, I'm busy looking around the walls because, them little things, geckos are climbing around everywhere on the walls and stuff. And, someone said, oh man, I said, yeah, I don't like them. I said, I don't want them dropping down on my neck. You're laughing at me. But it's really funny. They don't fall. They climb up those, they climb up that wall and they'll sit up there, their little suction cups, and they just hang up there. My wife, now you talk to my wife. My wife's from Florida. They're there, and she doesn't like them either. But it didn't stop me. I kept working. Kept working. Now, the one good thing I was told, I didn't have to worry about any snakes. They didn't have to worry about any snakes. Same thing in Jamaica. They didn't have to worry about any snakes. They had the mongoose. They brought the mongoose in. Mongoose ran them off the island. Now they've got a problem. The mongoose is there, and the mongoose wasn't native to the island, and they can't get rid of the mongoose. But the mongoose got rid of all the snakes. Yeah, it's good, but the mongoose is messing with the ecosystem. So they're trying to find a way to get rid of the mongoose or mongoose. Oh.
It wasn't put out on purpose. It stuck on land through shipping, but it completely disrupted the whole ecosystem of Guam and eating all the birds,
Ah.
causing freezing here. And it was going across power lines and putting out power lines. It's still in some.
It's on the other side of the world. On the other side of the world. You never know. You never know. You might end up in Guam. You don't know. Don't know. Never know what door God opens up. I mean, you know. I'm sorry?
Isn't there an island or something that's just snakes?
Oh, I don't know. Probably. You don't have to go to an island. You can go to Arizona. You can go to Texas. You can go to Mississippi. You can go to Ohio, and you'll find. That's right. Yeah, I get ready to say, you can stay right here in Montgomery County and you will find snakes. I remember over in Jefferson Township a number of years ago, you seen those whipping snakes, those green ones, y'all know what I'm talking about? Sister Cole, those like they call them whipping snakes in cornfields. They're green and they stand up they come up on their tail and they kind of like move along. Ever seen those in the cornfields? They had them out in Jefferson Township. I was out there visiting Jerry years ago, and saw that thing. He said, "Oh, it's all right." He said, "It's not going to bite you." I said, "It's a snake, Jerry." I said, "Jerry, it's a snake. That's all I got to know." And when you see that thing get up on its tail, like, no, that's a snake. I don't like that. What's that? Yeah, so I mean, I think every state in the union has snakes. All right. Solomon, all right, we'll see another example of the word able. King Solomon used the word to emphasize the power of great sin. In Proverbs 27:4, and depending on your translation, the Hebrew word that's used here can be translated either jealousy or envy. So either translation. I've gone with the use of envy for this study. So who is able to stand before envy? Earlier in those verses in that chapter, Proverbs 27, verses 1 through 3, you see how the Holy Spirit, the case that he's building in relationships, and then it gets to this point of how dangerous envy is. Envy is a sin that is, or jealousy, but envy, as I said, I'm going to lean toward envy, is a very serious transgression. And when I say that even Jesus fell before envy, he didn't fall to envy, because that means he would have done what? Sin. So we know he didn't sin. Tempted in all points as we, yet without sin. But he fell to it in the sense that those who were guilty of murder did so out of envy. And when the Jews had an opportunity to have Jesus released, Pilate said, which one do you want me to deliver? Which one do you want me to give to you? You want Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus who's called the Christ, or do you want Barabbas? Which one do you want? And what did they ask for? Who did they say? They said, give us Barabbas. And then Matthew records that the reason that they asked for Barabbas was out of envy. For out of envy, they delivered Jesus over to the Romans. Think about that. Why? You know, Jerry, you talk about that the Israelites had seen all of what the Father had done. These Jews had, for for years, observed the life of Jesus. They were witnesses to the miracles. They saw what kind of life they were present, and yet when they had the opportunity to say, give us Jesus, no, give us a known criminal, give us the guy that's been robbing us, that's been killing our people, not the guy that's been giving us life, not the guy that's been feeding us, not the man that has shown us God. But out of envy. They didn't have a real love for God. They claimed they did, but they didn't. Envy, human envy, carries with it this idea of, if I can't have it, neither can you. Jesus was unwilling to compromise. He was unwilling to go along, to get along. He was not willing to be what they wanted. He was going to be what the Father wanted. So I wanted you to look at several passages and talk about the sure cure for envy. And so as you have looked at those 5 passages, what do they, as you look at each one of those, what do they suggest as a sure cure for envy in the church? Because we still have it going on today. And if you think there is no envy happening among Christians, then you've got your proverbial head stuck in the sand, because it is. Because we have people who are still carnal, 1 Corinthians chapter 3. So as you look at those 5 passages, what do you see? What's the first one tell us to do as a cure for envy? So the first one, have the attitude of, I'm going to seek first the kingdom. That means what falls behind? Everything else, specifically self. Matthew 16:20. Could have put Matthew 16:24 there. But if the kingdom is first, everything else gets into its proper. If I put the kingdom first, then everything else will start falling into its proper perspective. Kingdom first, family, self, others. Many preachers have used this. I'm not first. I've borrowed it. Joy is an acrostic for Jesus, others, yourself. I know y'all have heard that acrostic. Joy, Jesus, others, yourself. Put Jesus first, others second, yourself third. That's what. Yeah. I'm not original with that. I borrowed it from somebody else. Matthew 7:12. This is called the golden rule. Learn to treat our fellow man, treat our brethren in the proper way. And if we do that, I can't be envious of you if I treat you the way you ought to be treated. Can't do it. But when I have the wrong disposition, I see something you have and I don't have, and I become envious. What does Paul tell us in Romans 12:15? The cure. That whole chapter is dealing with our disposition before God. Starting in verse 9, he starts laying out qualities that we're to exhibit as God's people. Yes. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. That's a cure for envy. If you're rejoicing with someone who's, your brother has just received great, he's got great news. He's just got a windfall, and I'm going to rejoice with him over his windfall. But we also will weep with those who are suffering. Can envy if you have that, if you're practicing those things. Galatians 6:10. Do good to all men, especially those who are of the household of faith. If my attitude is the right one and I'm seeking to do right by my brethren. See, the envious person won't do good. Because remember those Jews? No, we don't want Barabbas. We don't want Jesus. Give us Barabbas. All right. That's why we state here that most church members are good at giving aid when people are in trouble. Often outsiders remark, "Your group was so wonderful." If we had the spirit of helpfulness at all time, the sin of envy would be lessened. We can be envious only when we think only of self and not of others. Proverbs 14 verse 30 is one of those passages that just kind of, when you first read it, I remember the first time I read this many years ago. I had a friend of mine that was teaching me in Southern California, Jonathan Bird. He knew this passage, and he'd constantly remind us of it in class. Envy is what? What's the first blank? Rottenness to the where? To the bones. Rottenness to the bone. Deep as you can get. Rotting bone is no good, because then it's in your bloodstream. And that's what he says envy is. And so we don't want envy, and we have to the bell has rung, so we have to mark our spot. We don't want to allow envy to run our life. And so it's a great sin, and we are able to stand before it. We can overcome it, because our Lord has said that we can. Next time we are together, we will pick up then on how the Apostle Paul used the word, and you'll see you got some fill in the blank, and then we'll look at James and so forth. Then I've got a sheet of additional questions that we'll give those out next week. All right, Brother Lyle, let's have a closing prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Brother Lyle. We thank you, dear God, that you've given us your word. May we truly put our trust in you and the things you've commanded us to do, so we know that if we will